The release of Jeff Titus from prison 21 years after he was wrongfully convicted in a double murder was based on a single file labeled serial killer that was kept from defense attorneys.
The file was about an alternate suspect, a serial killer who hunted down men in Ohio. Cold case detectives who helped put Titus in prison say that they never saw that file, and they have said that they knew nothing about that serial killer.
But a Target 8 investigation shows the cold case team was aware of the serial killer before Titus's conviction and did nothing to look into him. Ken Coker here now with these revelations.
Brian and Sue, the two cold case detectives who worked on the 1990 murders of two hunters in Kalamazoo County, were questioned directly about the serial killer by the producers of an investigation discovery show.
Did you know about the serial killer, that there was a guy who was a serial killer who'd been looked at?
No, I did not. No, I mean, this is interesting.
You don't know anything about the serial killer?
No. Fill me in.
But Target 8 found a police report among court filings that shows at least one of those detectives knew. The report shows that Sergeant Mike Workema, the cold case leader who told the ID producer that he had never heard of the serial killer, helped to interview a woman about that killer. The report is from May 2002, months before Titus's conviction. That woman, Helen Knopfs, who lived next to Jeff Titus, recalled how on the day of the 1990 murders, a stranger had slammed a car into a ditch just down the road from her, near the murder scene, and about the same time.
He was sweaty and seemed nervous and not like smiling or friendly, or just needed help. And he said he was in the ditch because some deer had crossed.
And so he acted like a guy who really wanted to get out of there.
Exactly.
At the time, she helped police with a composite drawing. More than 2 years later, in 1993, after Thomas Dillon was arrested and identified as the killer of 5 men in Ohio, she and her son picked him out of a lineup. They had done that at the request of one of the original detectives in the Kalamazoo County murders of Doug Estes and Jim Bennett in the Fulton State Game area. Not only did they pick out Dillon, but her composite bore an uncanny resemblance to the confessed killer.
It looked like him.
The original detectives ruled out both Titus and later Dillon, both through alibis. But when cold case detectives visited Helen Knopf 17 years later in 2000, they were focused on Titus, not Dillon. Did you talk about Thomas Dillon?
Yes, I talked about the car in the ditch, and that was the whole reason that they were talking to me.
So were you surprised they didn't pursue it?
I didn't really know that they didn't pursue it. I didn't know what happened.
At Titus's trial 2 years later, she was called as a defense witness.
The whole reason I was there is because of what happened down at the corner and Thomas Dillon. That's why I was testifying.
But transcripts show that while she testified about the sweaty driver in the ditch, Dillon's name never came up in court. Nobody asked. So clearly the cold case team was aware of Dillon.
Yeah, I guess they were. They had blinders on. I mean, it's a real problem in wrongful conviction cases is the police get a bee in their bonnet. You know, they get a theory and everything else is excluded. All other lines of investigation get shut down once they settle on a suspect.
Workema, who's now retired, acknowledged to Target 8 that Dillon had come up during the cold case investigation, but says his team did not have enough to pursue him. Shouldn't that have been your job? Once you found out that this woman said that she went over there and picked out a guy from the lineup, should you not have pursued that?
She did not pick him out. Like she said, of the people there, three looks most like him. That's not an identification.
However, an FBI report back then said the woman and her son, quote, positively identified Dillon as the individual they saw at the vehicle stuck in the ditch. Workema blames one of the original detectives who had already eliminated the serial killer after finding he was hunting in Ohio until noon the day of the shooting, 285 miles away. An alibi. You said that Thomas Dillon was eliminated because he had this alibi. Well, Jeff Titus also had an alibi, but you went after him. Why not go after Thomas Dillon with the same fervor?
You know, because you don't know all the details of the investigation. The investigators, there was a lot of things about Titus that brought answer.
Workman says his team could have done more if it had seen the 30 pages of reports gathered by one of those original detectives, or if it had learned that Dillon had talked to a cellmate about killing 2 in another county, or that the FBI had tracked Dillon enough to know he often drove hundreds of miles at a time.
In 2000, when we got it, we had gone to Ohio and talked to Dillon. By all means, we'd have talked to Dillon. We were, he was already serving life in prison. We would have focused on establishing a relationship with him because he would have nothing to lose to talk to us.
It's not clear what happened to the 30-page serial killer file on Dillon. Workman and 2 other members of the cold case team told Target 8 they never saw it.
It had never been a part of the original file. I have no explanation as to why it wasn't, because it certainly would have been a bombshell.
The head of the Michigan Innocence Clinic found the serial killer reports in 2020 in the case file at the Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Department.
How is it that you were able to find it and they never saw it?
You know, I can't answer that because I wasn't there when they looked through it, but it was a big file. Very, very big file. It took me many hours to go through it.
Bruce Wiersema is the original detective who created that serial killer file. He is retired in Arizona.
It was in the file when it was turned over to the cold case team. The entire package was turned over.
They claim
so I don't know.
They claim they never saw it.
I know. I understand that. They may have never seen it. I can't imagine.
He says the serial killer refused his request for an interview. Dillon died in prison.
Do you think Thomas Dillon did it?
I do at this point, yes.
Jeff Titus was the wrong man in prison for the last 21 years.
Yeah.
The retired cold case sergeant disagrees.
I still believe Jeff Titus is a killer, yes. But you know what? There could have been a turn. Based on his character, the things that he did, yes, he's the killer. He's a dangerous man, and I'm pretty much afraid of him. But I hope he's worthy of his new freedom, and he does the right thing with it.
He says even though he thinks Titus is guilty, that he doesn't think it would make any sense to try him again since so many years have passed and some witnesses have died. The prosecutor still hasn't said whether he'll retry the case.